Hello and welcome to this Wigton Book Festival event with Dara McAnulty on his book Diary of a Young Naturalist. And here it is, the book itself. I'm Rachel Plummer. I'm going to be hosting the event this evening. So wherever you're joining us from around the world, and whether you're watching via the Wigton Book Festival website or on YouTube, I hope you enjoy your time with us. So to start with, some housekeeping points. This is a young adult event and the audience may include vulnerable people. So as such, please think about your language in the chat and the comments. And if anyone feels uncomfortable, please notify one of the moderators on whichever medium you're watching from. So the format the event is going to take is that, first of all, I'm going to introduce Dara. Then he and I are going to have a chat about his work and his book. And then Dara is going to give us a short reading from the book. And after that, we'll take some questions from you, the audience. Now, if you have a question, you can ask it at any time via the website homepage. I'm told there should be a button. I think it's just below this video. Or alternatively, if you're on YouTube, you can ask questions via the comments section. So, I've been following Dara's work for several years now, so I was really excited to be asked to interview him tonight. Dara McAnulty is a young nature writer and conservationist from Northern Ireland. Dara's work has received numerous awards, including from BBC Springwatch and Birdwatch magazine. He's been an ambassador for the RSPCA and the Jane Goodall Institute, and he's the youngest ever recipient of the RSPB Medal for Conservation for his efforts working against raptor persecution and habitat loss. Dara began blogging about nature and wildlife in 2016. His first book, this one here, Diary of a Young Naturalist, won the prestigious Wainwright Prize for Nature Writing and has been longlisted for the Baillie Gifford Prize for Non-Fiction. In it, Dara discusses his experiences as a young autistic person, his activism, his passion for and connection with the natural world, and his close relationship with his family. So hello, welcome, Dara.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, it's great to be here and to be able to talk about writing.
Brilliant.
It just fills me with energy and hope of getting to talk about my book, but also the issues that I explore in it and be able to talk about them as well is very, very exciting.
Perfect. Well, so to start us off, can you tell us, what is it about the natural world that catches your imagination the way that it so clearly does?
I think it's a mixture of things, as most interesting things in this world are, and I think it starts off with basic curiosity of wanting to discover why and how and what, and all these questions, and asking those questions about the world around you, because it's that from that process of asking those questions that we build up a greater understanding of that world. And the fact to me is that there's so many questions to ask in nature, from what type of bird it is to how does this ecosystem work, and what something is, or how everything just interlocks and interconnects and is entwined with each other. and asking those questions about this complicated system of life on Earth. And the answers are just as interesting as the question most of the time. And that, for me, it really caught me, and my imagination. And because when you go out into nature, everything's a lot more free, it feels. You're free to experience it in whichever way you want. There's no judgment of how you're supposed to do something in nature. And it gives you almost a free space to be able to explore, to adventure in, to ask questions about, and to build up a connection with, without having this human world almost forcing you back in a sense, and chaining you down by what you're supposed to be doing.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I definitely feel that too. That the kind of endless curiosity. It makes me think this is what humans are. We're curious animals, and we want to find things out.
Yeah.
It's obvious in every page, I think, of the book that you have this burning curiosity, but also that you take great comfort in nature, but also in writing about nature. So when did you first kind of start to think about putting this together into a book? And it's formatted as a diary. Did it start as a diary, which you then pulled together into a coherent project, or did you sort of start out knowing that you were going to write a book?
It started off as base. So first of all, I was writing, I'm not really good with imaginative names for projects.
Okay.
And so I was writing a blog series called Diary of a Young Naturalist. And I kind of, it was just basically how I was experiencing the world from a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
I was writing these blogs every day, and I was approached by Little Toller for doing a guest blog for their site, Common Ground. And I don't know really how it happened, but we kind of got into conversation about like maybe compiling my blogs into a book. And then and then we looked towards the Diary of a Young Naturalist blog series. And we thought, okay, we might be able to do these, maybe like a little tiny book for like Twitter followers, or like a small wee thing.
Yeah.
It was not ever meant to be this size.
It grew.
It grew very fast because I wrote a diary entry and then I quite enjoyed it. So I wrote another one and another one. And then I had written an entire season of them. I was like, oh, this could be a book that I'm writing. Completely by accident, I had sort of ran headfirst into a book without really understanding or realizing what I was doing, because I just wanted to keep on writing. And you know what? I'm really glad that I did write at this time of my life, because like it was quite an interesting time. Like, I don't think the book would have worked if I had written it at any other time, basically.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting year. A lot is happening, and that it's really interesting that the physical move of you moving house and moving to a different place. It's got a way of showing off both places from a really interesting perspective.
And I know I didn't feel it at the time, but having those mental health difficulties allowed me to show all of these different aspects. And in that sense, it taught me a lot about myself and who I am, being able to go over and try and learn about these things and writing about them and processing it and taking the measures to make sure that it didn't happen again. I wouldn't go delving into this deep state of agony, which I don't think anybody really wants to be going into. But
no.
it did make interesting material for writing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're remarkably frank in your writing about your mental health struggles, especially the points of, as you mentioned, what seems to be really quite serious depression at times, both in response to bullying and in response to what's going on with the environment and with wildlife, that we're seeing more and more of, but also, struggling to navigate in a society that's often set up in a way that's deeply unhelpful to neuroatypical people. I wondered if you could talk a bit about how writing helped with your mental health struggles, but also how you feel social media, including your blog, Twitter, etc., affected your mental health both positively and negatively.
I think I'm going to start with social media because it's really, really important. Like, Twitter. God, I have a crazy relationship with that platform.
That's relatable.
I've got like a month cycle of the month cycle of Twitter. Beginning of the month, I'm going to post everything. I'm going to be really, really good. I'm going to start speaking lovely tweets. By the middle of the month, everything's still going great, but elements of Twitter are starting to creep in, and idiots are starting to appear and saying things that make me angry inside.
Yeah.
Then we get to about 3/4 of the month. It's getting worse. I'm still doing tweets, and that side is really helping me be able to speak. But the bad side of Twitter is starting to creep into my mind slowly.
Yeah.
And then for the last maybe 5 days of the month, I take a break from Twitter. And then start of the month, let's go it again. It's going to be good this time.
Yeah.
And restart the cycle. Like I've been on a little bit of a break at the moment with start of school and all of that.
Of course.
But like Twitter has been really, really important for me in that sense. It's given me a platform. It's given me the ability to talk about things that I'm passionate about, and it's to be able to articulate them and share them with other people has been really, really important for me, because I don't like being able to just write and describe things, like, is so deep rooted into my personality and who I am, that to be able to speak to other people through writing, lots of other people, and having that almost feedback on these very small pieces of writing that are condensed into a limited amount of characters. But being able to write in that way is really, really important for me. And then of course, there's the flip side of that, is where anybody can write whatever they want on this platform.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's very, I think that would resonate with a lot of people, that experience of Twitter. It's interesting what you say about that really short art form. For me, that reminds me of poetry, and I know I've seen tweets described as a kind of microfiction, but for me they seem like those very short poems. They're interesting, like a little prose poem.
Little small shot of literacy.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I was really delighted to get to see some of the glimpses of poetry in your book, some of your poetry, but also to read about how important poetry is to your family. That was really lovely to read. Has your interest in poetry come from your parents, do you think? And do you see yourself writing more poems?
I wouldn't consider myself very good at writing poetry. Like, I can write a few poems, but they take like ages to make. But I've grown up with poetry because there's a lot of poetry books just lying about the house. Like, I've got like a bookshelf which is where the laptop, and I'm just like looking at it, and I've just actually noticed that I've got just below me this massive book, which is 1,000 Years of Irish Poetry.
Oh, lovely. What a nice book.
It's got poetry from like the first ever recorded poem in Ireland, right up to the 1900s, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Do you have a favourite poem?
So my favourite poet is Seamus Heaney, by far.
You quote him a few times
in
your book, yeah.
I love being able to talk and write about Seamus Heaney's work, because it is magical, and he creates these almost worlds within worlds. One of my personal favourites is I shouldn't have used the word personal, because that makes things awkward now, because it's called Personal Helicon. I don't use the word personal, not like when I was doing it. But yeah, Personal Helicon is one of my favourite poems ever, in this way that you can describe worlds within a well, and looking into a well and seeing all of these shapes and images and reflections, and sometimes no reflections, and being able to, it's almost like you're looking, have you ever seen those sort of optical illusions, like an infinite mirror?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But every single time like that mirror happens, there's something slightly different in the image. And the further you look, you get a new little detail into it. And that's what Seamus Heaney's poems are like, isn't it?
Yeah, I can really see what you mean by that. And I think the way that he kind of draws your attention to something small and then shows you everything that's inside it, like the whole galaxy that's inside this one little thing. I think that a lot of poetry is trying to do that, trying to show the kind of miraculous details in everyday things that we take for granted or overlook.
I love that entire concept of writing on the whole, of taking what is considered ordinary, you see every day, a dandelion or a daisy or trees, and showing this incredible, delicate and complex structures that sometimes lie beneath them.
Yeah, definitely. I can really see that. I think it's a really good way to look at it. And I think I can see a lot about. I can look at your poetry in that light now, and that's interesting to me. Okay, I wanted to ask you, I know that you're particularly invested in combating raptor persecution, and you mention these birds many times in your book, including describing some of the tagging and monitoring activities you've taken part in. Here in Scotland, that's obviously a challenge we particularly face, and I know that there's a lot of public outcry around the illegal killing of these magnificent birds, and I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about this subject now. What do we mean by raptor persecution, and why is it important?
Okay, so raptor persecution is the illegal killing of birds of prey, and it is horrific to think that because a bird may pose a threat to your production, you're going to just kill it. And that it feels almost barbaric, that act of almost tactless murder and killing for personal gain, personal wealth. It disgusts me. And I remember going over to Scotland to tag goshawks, and it was one of the most magical experiences I've ever had. And I remember looking into its eye. It's actually very close, and it's in the beginning of the book. And I just looked into this goshawk's eye, young goshawk that hadn't yet fledged the nest, and we were tagging it. And I've never ever forgotten it. And I doubt I very much struggle to forget it for many, many years. And to know that people would kill a creature like that, just it on Rosie. Sorry, my dog's whining.
Hello, Rosie.
Hello, Rosie. Are you like? Don't whine, please. Okay.
Rosie also features in the book.
Yeah, Rosie is in the book.
Yes.
Rosie made me lose my train of thought.
Yeah, I see definitely what you mean about that. There's that line almost. It's not killing for food or for survival. It's killing literally for kind of for money, for wealth, and it's so needless. It's such a kind of pointless, needless thing that I think it stirs up that anger in a lot of people. I know it does in me. Yeah, more than anything, I think. Okay, I think I'm going to finish up, just ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll move on to the reading, if that's okay. I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to young people who might want to get involved in conservation work? And also what advice you might have for parents or teachers who want to encourage a love of nature in young people, but who perhaps feel out of their depth or don't know where to start?
Okay, so for people who want to get into conservation, and I feel like it's strange because everybody's local area is very widely different in what you can get involved in. The National Trust are good people to get in contact with for volunteer work. They're really, really good. And just trying to, like, it's difficult because there aren't many, like, active, it does feel like there's not many active things you can do, but so you've got to think about what sort of strengths you have. Is it writing? In which case, write about it. If it's artistic, make art about those things that you love, because for me as a writer, my way of action has been to write about it, because I feel like, I remember Rosie scratching herself, and she's like rolling all over. Like she's been inactive, basically in stasis for the entirety of the day, and now she decides
lucky Rosie.
She went out for a walk, and then she goes into like a stasis sleep for most of the day, and only now do you decide to wake up and like
it's always the way.
So like, because do you not like me sitting beside you, Sada? Nope. Okay. Anyway, but getting into conservation, like
I really like what you said about finding your individual strengths and playing to that. I think that's really true, that there's what we can each do is different, but it can all be important and helpful.
Yeah, and for teachers, I would just say always promote. I feel like as a teacher, your job is to educate your students about the world around them, and that means impressioning this sense of wonder, which I believe is one of the most important feelings a human can feel, is that connection of wonder. And for a teacher, you need to be able to inspire that wonder in your students by showing them the natural world and telling them that it isn't dirty, that it isn't dangerous, because so much of the school culture at this point is warnings, health and safety lines. I remember in primary school we weren't allowed to go out if it was raining, and that for me feels like you're designating what should be to these children, and they're going to go for the rest of their lives and almost fear the rain and be taught that the rain is a bad thing. I personally love the rain.
Yeah.
Very few feelings like I'm going out into the middle of a storm and getting absolutely soaked, coming back in, soaking, and getting dried off, and that feeling of getting dry and
warm and cozy. Yeah,
warm and cozy.
It's a lovely feeling.
Lovely feeling. And you can't have that experience without getting wet in the first place.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah,
my daughter quite likes to swim in the rain in the river. So it's freezing cold, whatever time of year she's in there.
Although it is actually better to swim when it's raining because the temperature difference actually decreases.
It's easier to get in.
Yeah, it's usually not the cold that makes it feel cold. If you kind of, it's you're going from something warm into something cold is usually what really gets you, like the shock of like. Yeah. But yeah, it's, and teaching your pupils that the world is interesting and you can go out and explore it. And luckily for us, we don't have that many dangerous creatures roaming our woods, which means that you can basically explore to your freak's content without too much foreknowledge, as long as you don't eat. As long as you're not eating random berries and mushrooms, you're most likely going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Teaching your children that, I think, is the best thing a parent and a teacher could do, because I feel like the thing that annoys me most is parents telling their children, "Oh, don't touch that, that's dirty."
Yes, you mentioned this a couple of times in the book. I definitely feel that that frustration as well as a parent of young children myself, and my children are always out getting mucky, getting dirty, and you know, I've had disapproving looks, or bus drivers not wanting to let us on because the kids are mucky, and I can see where they're coming from. But at the same time, they're kids. Let them be mucky. Let them get dirty. It's not harmful.
It's not harmful. I've been messing around in mud, dirt, and occasionally cow paths for like 14 years, and I have not contracted any strange disease.
Yeah, I feel like at the moment you're in more danger in a shop.
Like that way now, doesn't it? And like, why are we being told that something is dirty when it can inspire so much wonder and passion and determination, and there's no real repercussions to it?
Absolutely.
And mostly good. Like, dirt is good. It's what gives us experience. You cannot go through your life without getting dirty at least once and lead a fruitful life, because in my opinion, because that's how we improve as human beings, is through experiencing every aspect of our world, and getting dirty is just one of those aspects. And so that's what I'd say to parents and teachers: just let them go free. They're children. It's what they're supposed to be doing. Like, they're born to go free.
That's it exactly. Well, thank you so much for that, Dara. Will you now share with us a short reading from your book, and then we'll ask some questions maybe from the audience. I'm already getting some questions coming through. If there are any others, now would be a great time to ask them. So Dara, over to you.
Yeah. Oh, Rosie's gotten up. Yeah, you can kind of see it. Yeah, haven't gotten up all day.
Aww.
They're like, wait for her to finish her drink.
She's come to listen to your reading.
What?
She's woken up to listen to you.
Can you hear that? She's
It's
doing
all right. We're okay. We can hear you.
Okay. There is nothing quite like the gradual slanting of light, the fiery beauty of the landscape. Although life is in a state of slow withering and soft lullaby, there is a bursting from the ground, connecting under our feet, mycelium strands interweaving and bearing fruit from darkness, fungi, fruits of the forest. Every day we walk over those invisible formings, unaware of their necessity for life on Earth, a hidden wonder web of connection. The smell of the earth in autumn is so different, intoxicating, a massive exhaling of compounds that swings my senses, and while the land breathes out, I breathe in deeply, covering the incoming dread of the newness to come, new school, new people, new navigations. Grief, although not as raw, still pulses. These past months have been tumultuous, and I must not think about the waste, the days lost. Instead, I focus on the rising. I'm rising from the darkness too, and feel the light and the warmth of the soil as I lie on the forest floor below a massive birch tree. I'm surrounded by 5 or 6 fly agaric mushrooms. Like them, I have burst open. I feel more resilient, more powerful. The years of cruel taunts, beatings, exclusion, isolation, hopelessness, all the potential for hurt has been eclipsed by meaning and purpose. My life now is all about that. I can't just love the natural world. I have to raise my voice even louder to help it. It's my duty, the duty of all of us, to support and protect nature, our life support system, our interconnectedness, our interdependence. But is writing enough? It doesn't feel like it's enough, not nearly enough. I need to think of other ways of rising. The leaves of the birch tree and diffuse their light. The fly agarics are red jewels spotted with white flakes, flaming bright and triggering in me flashes, evocations. I'm 4 years old again, hunkered down, facing a man with long white hair and glasses. I've just started wearing glasses too. He has a wooden box filled with the fruits of the forest. Each different fungus is fascinating, alluring, utterly mesmerizing. I feel it, you see, the connection, even back then. So I listened intently and relentlessly asked the man questions. His kindness isn't all remembered, but an impression of kindness was imprinted in me, and the spark was lit. A need for learning was burning. I don't remember more of that day, if only I did. What did it smell like? What sounds did I hear? What did I truly say? Mum and Dad have photos of me, tiny and serious and spectacled and obviously interested enough to shake out my money box and go accompanied to Waterstones, where I laid out the coins on the counter for my first field guide. Roger Phillips' Mushroom and Other Fungi of Britain and Europe. Mum bought me picture books too. My favourite was The Mushroom Hunt by Simon Fraser, with its glorious illustrations and wise words. Both guide and picture books are now worn, dog-eared, still loved. My body feels light as I roll over onto my stomach and stare at the agarics until they blur. Regarded by shamans as holy mushrooms, they were given as gifts on the winter solstice. Perhaps because they are hallucinogenic. Although deaths from this particular amanita are rare, I wouldn't chance it. They are so beautiful though. The quintessential fairy tale toadstool. Some are rounded and small, just starting to blush. Others are more gnome platters, bright and peeling. I touch the spongy surface, slightly damp and sticky. I smell it. Only a faint odour of sweetness. I swivel round again and think of the season ahead, new beginnings in school. A school protected by mountains to the back and side, facing the sea on the other side, a new horizon. I vow to stand proud. I have a mission. I have a journey to make, doubtless with obstacles, but they won't stop me. Just as you can't stop fruits from bursting from tree and soil, I can battle quietly or loudly with humility. I can be rooted to ideas, plans, and hope. I can grow. Sapling stage is ending. It is time to grow thicker branches and mature. That was the beginning of autumn. And basically, it was, I had a mushroom obsession at this time. I don't know if you can tell. I had a very vigorous special interest with mushrooms during the period of writing that entry. I think that may be evident.
It's beautiful. It's one of my daughter's favourite passages because she also loves mushrooms.
Yeah, and I was, at that point, I was so fascinated with how mushrooms worked. And I was also doubtful about how much writing could do, as you can see in that. And I do actually think that now I've completely overturned that thinking of that thought process. I feel like that's what this book is about, essentially, is what can we do? And I think I've come at the end of the book to that realization that writing about something can be just as important as these massive conservation movements, because it's with that education and knowledge that we can build and work towards a better world and a better future. And that realization at the end of the book makes me feel a lot stronger with my writing and that I'm doing something.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask some questions that we've had coming in. We've had some good questions coming through. So I'll just start us off. The first question. Hi, Dara. I read your book this week and it was a tonic for the soul. I can agree with that. I'm planning on using your book in my teaching of ecology and interdependence to 12-year-olds. Do you have a favourite diary entry which you would like to be used?
Ooh. This is hard because like what could you use for ecology? Because I feel like my diary entries can be like split up into different categories. There's ones which are looking inside me. There's ones that are observing the world. And there's others which are contemplative, which is more winter actually. Because in winter I'm sort of looking back on everything that has happened and looking further back. Funnily enough, winter was the funnest to write. I fully enjoy writing winter. But the best one for ecology, that's got me thinking. Like, is there
There's a lot that touches on interdependence, certainly.
Oh yeah, interdependence is basically in every entry.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
That mushroom entry could be that, and the beginning of autumn is quite a good one for that interconnectedness and the mycelium networks. I think if you can understand mycelium networks, you can understand basically everything about ecosystems and that entire topic of interdependence is basically encapsulated by mushrooms as with the Wood Wide Web and all of that sphere of science. Basically, what you can learn from mushrooms is you can learn so much from mushrooms that you don't really like. It's a very big topic, and I think I would go with mushrooms for interdependence and interconnectedness because they feel like almost the essential bit of that system.
Yeah, that sounds great. Helena asks, Do you plan to go on and pursue further study in naturalism at university/college at some point in the future?
I'm not entirely sure. So I'm going to go into biology. You see, because every single day I have a different idea of what I'm going to do.
Me too.
Sometimes it's zoology. I want to go and do zoology. Other times it's pure ecology. Other times it's ornithology, just pure ornithology. Other times I want to go into botany. Other times I go way out and want to do psychology. And that changes on a day-to-day basis. But I'm kind of going biology. It's a broad topic. I can sort it out later.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
You can specialize later.
Yeah, I'll just kick the can down the road a little bit and like I'll worry about it later. I'll learn as much about biology as physically possible before having to like choose.
I think that's a good policy.
I want to stave off to having to go down a specialist route as long as possible. I know I have to do it at some point, but
Joyce asks, are there any writers from the natural world who inspire you? Totally agree about Seamus Heaney, by the way.
So there's a few writers. Robert McFarlane.
Yep.
Absolutely love his work. Because it describes the landscape in this very visceral way. It's tangible. You can feel the words in a sense. That his writing, I absolutely adore his writing. And you see, I don't read very many nature books. I know.
Okay.
But I read a lot of nature poetry. I have like a mountain of poetry books beside my bed, and I've got this lovely little I don't have it here. I had it here. My organization skills are absolutely. Oh! I'm right. I do have it here. I usually, you see, I know I kept my poems here, so these are like my go-to poetry books. I've got Death of a Naturalist by Seamus Heaney. This is like my tome of eternal knowledge, basically. I've got this lovely little book called Poems on Nature, and it's got this beautiful collection.
Lovely.
I love this book. I kind of had it just beside my bed. I've read every single poem in this book by now, and I have it just beside my bed. I kind of just like grab it off the side.
It's nice to have an anthology you can just dip into.
Like if I was ever feeling a little bit sad, I would just grab the book and I'd be able to read these pieces of poetry, which would instantly make me feel a lot better. And nature poetry for me is trying to find all of the different ways of expressing that connection that I know so many people have, and all of these people are trying to find their own way of describing it. And I like poetry because it's very concentrated, and you're constantly trying to find inventive ways of having a single word speak a million. And I love that. And I like, so John Clare would be one of my favorites. Patrick Kavanagh would also be up there. Seamus Heaney, of course. And like there's John Clare was very special to me. He's he's quickly rising in my favorite poets list for how he described the natural world, because he had this he was a person who really went for that idea, like we were talking about before, of taking these ordinary things that we see every day,
Absolutely.
and them and making everything feel that little bit more. And wait a second, I've got a John Clare poem. Oh, sorry, I can't find it. But there's a oh my goodness, I've got down here. Sorry, I've got like stuff scattered around me. Because my skills are tiny. I've also got this beautiful
oh, the Lost Spells.
Lost Spells.
Yeah,
I got this sent early. This is like my special book.
How nice.
I know. It's like and this is by Robert McFarlane and Jackie Morris, if anybody didn't know. And it's got more spells, which I love. Like I couldn't get enough of the lost words, and so even more. It's like one of my favorites at the moment. Where is it? Was the Jackdaw. It's very long. It's actually quite long poem, so I won't read it now. But it's got this furious pace to it of exactly how I imagine jackdaws. Of very furious rhyming, of like this sort of snappiness that you sort of get with like the sort of head movements of a jackdaw. We've got one that kind of occasionally dive bombs the bird feeder, at least a day in our garden. And Silver Blue Eye is very startling and stark against this really beautiful bird. Like some people may say, oh, it's just a crow. But all of these different, that entire corvid family, I don't think people realize how diverse they are when you get to really look at them. Like a raven is massive, for like a beard, a large beak. And then you've got the rook, which is like, I think like your stereotypical crow is your rook with a grey beak, very stares into you sort of bird. And we have the jackdaw, which is an incredibly clever bird. Very small and unassuming, I think. Then you've got the jay, which is like the luxurious, look at sort of bird. It's like it like takes the.
That's a fantastic impression.
Like most of the corvids are like, I'm really black and moody sort of bird, and the jay's like, look at
I've arrived.
And like pink and blue and and then you have the magpie, which has so much mythology almost behind it, like the 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never told. And so it's always got that almost aura of mystery about it, that black and white, very monochrome look to it. It's got the two most opposite colors that you can possibly have, both in the very stark sort of patterning on it that makes it really. It's a quite striking bird, the magpie, and I feel like we sort of take them for granted now. But every time I see them, they just strike me as this bird that seems to almost defy the usual color schemes, as in we've got the light and the dark in this single bird. It's almost like the yin and yang of birds, isn't it? It's got this beautiful bird that can sometimes steal chicks, but is also this bringer of hope and joy. In the poem, it depending on the amount of birds, like 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, the fact that the first one is sorrow and 2 for joy, I love, because they're almost contrasts of each other in that sense, and it's almost like this bird is almost shrouded in that aura of opposite, and that for me is very intriguing. So I love the Corvus family. I find them one of the most fascinating bird groups and families out there. But and yeah.
Someone's asking in the questions, have you ever read Ted Hughes? And I presume they're thinking of Crow. Have you read any of his Crow poems?
Yes, I've read a few of Ted Hughes' Crow poems. Ted is a very exciting poet. I can't believe I didn't mention him before. I'm like, sorry, there's so many poets.
There's just endless. Actually, who I was thinking of when you mentioned the Jackdaw poem, I was thinking there's a fantastic poet called Polly Atkin, and she talks a lot about nature. She spends a lot of time in nature, and particularly approaching nature as a kind of disabled or chronically ill person. But she has a poem about the jackdaw in her book Basic Nest Architecture, which is a book of poems that are primarily about birds. I think you'd really enjoy it. She's a poet that's writing right now. I don't know if you know of her, but I definitely recommend her if you don't.
On Amazon tonight.
Yeah, I would very much recommend her. So somebody's asking, Dara, what was it like to win the Wainwright Prize at such a young age?
Okay. I knew someone was going to ask about the Wainwright Prize. It felt very surreal, but it also felt very gratifying that a young person can write. It does feel like nature writing has been like there aren't very many young nature writers, or that there are at least not as many who are being seen, and being able to show that we do exist and we can write, and we can maybe even win these literary prizes. I hope inspires other young people to go out and write, because I want to see more young writers, because I do believe that we have this unique look on the world, that because everybody has their unique look on the world, and the writing and the literary world needs all of these perspectives to basically exist, because that if we were constantly referring to the same points of view and camera angles on a particular subject, we wouldn't get very many interesting books. And the fact that we have all of these different perspectives, and I think young people have a new and interesting one to give to the nature writing world, and I really hope to see more of them in the future. More of us in the future.
Absolutely, it does feel very timely at the moment with lots of the kind of the school strikes, lots of the things going on. It feels like something that's needed, something that's inevitable in a way. We're getting close to the end of our time, so I'd like to finish with one more question, one of my questions. It's a big question, so I don't expect you to answer exhaustively. But what do you feel are or should be the main goals of conservation in both the short and the long term going forward? And can you talk about some of the main challenges that our natural world's facing right now that we should be addressing?
Okay.
Like I said, it doesn't have to be exhaustive, just some of your thoughts on that.
Okay. So short term, so we've got a few major conservation issues. We've got the raptor persecution, which is still happening, and we do really need to get a grip of that, and be able to just try and put a stop to this rather horrific killing. We've got serious biodiversity decline, which has been demonstrated multiple times, that we are in deep danger from many species going extinct, which is horrific in itself. And then what that will cascade into every aspect of our lives. So, and then of course the massive elephant in the room, climate change. We've got a lot of issues facing us at the moment. And we've all, not just these massive issues like climate change and biodiversity loss, but we've also, I found, have so many issues on a local level. And I'm just thinking now on that question that we were talking about before about what can you do to get involved with conservation.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we all need to start local, because it's only from building up this foundation that we can begin to learn how to solve these massive issues facing us. I'm a firm believer in the almost pyramid approach, I guess, where you have a strong foundation at the local level, which allows you to reach these tougher issues, which then allows you to get to the top of the pyramid, which is obviously climate change and biodiversity loss. But you need almost a ladder to get up to those points. And that base that you put the ladder on is your local environment and your community and how everybody is interacting with each other and education. And for me, that is so important that we manage to get this right. So I would say for that question, feels ages ago now, we've been such a great talk. I'm sort of losing myself. Village in every town, every city is different and all have these different issues facing them, be it in Sheffield with the trees or in Scotland with those Raptor Persecution, to here where we've got a serious burning issue with people burning mountains. Just over in the Mourns, we have a serious issue with that. And to be able to tackle those almost localized issues, which then allows us to focus all of our efforts on the big issues. Because if we focus on the massive issues first, I have a fear that everything below it is just going to fall away. And then the solution that we've made for this big thing is then also going to collapse. And then we're back where we started, or possibly even worse than we were before. So yeah, get involved on the local level and start building these communities that we desperately need.
Absolutely. And if you don't see it, then start it. I think that's great advice. It's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Dara. This has just been such a wonderful conversation, and I loved hearing you read from your book. It's a brilliant book, Diary of a Young Naturalist. So I urge you, if you're watching, if you've not already got it, do pop out and get it, or order it online at the moment, maybe. So thanks very much for joining us, everybody, at this Wigton Book Festival event. Thank you to the Wigton Book Festival for having me and Dara on. It's been really wonderful. I hope you all have a good evening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.